Mine's a little bit different because I struggled a bit with what topic as well, and I thought, given the industry that Frayne Work's in, which is communication, today I talk about some of the things we've done in our office environment and with working with our clients to improve sustainability and to create a more sustainable workplace. And it's a little bit of it's a little bit confusing because we are digital. However, we do a lot of print work at Frayne Work. And I've noticed over the last 30 years I've been in the industry, the big shift from print medium to digital. And in fact, a lot of businesses have sort of gone under, a lot of print businesses in the last few years because there's just not the work. So you're in this bit of a conundrum in that, obviously you've got to keep your revenue up, but you're also trying to be environmentally responsible. And so it's really required us to think outside the square and go, okay, if we're going to lose our print revenue, how can we make that up in a business sense? And how can we create new sources of revenue to compensate for that? So I thought I'd just go through a little bit of a journey, and I think part of it started with our response to the Institute's sustainability policy, and it sort of coincided a bit with the MERP process. And we, because we're quite a small ministry, we did a bit of an adapted version of the MERP process. And we are a bit like the United Nations. We have members of our team who are from China, Indonesia, France, England, all across the board. So one of the first exercises we did was we sat around and I said, how about we just go around the table, there's 12 of us, and can we each think of an instance where we can hear the cry of the earth as the cry of the poor? And it was really interesting. One young guy that works as a coder is from China, and he told us that he had never seen a blue sky until he arrived in Australia. Yeah. And he told us that during the Beijing Olympics, the government would come out every morning and blast the sky so that it looked blue for the TV cameras. Oh. And he said that no Chinese person would trust the government's smog alert that day. They would go to the American embassy because they were inevitably different. And so he, that I was just like, oh, wow. Then we get to the next developer who's from Indonesia. And he was telling us about being involved in a massive tsunami type event as an 11-year-old. And we sort of went around the table and I said, we talked them all through and I said, okay, what can we do in our little world here to make a bit of a difference? And I want you to give me the ideas. I don't want to write a policy for Frayne Work. Let's create it together. And so I'll just go through a quick flick of some of the ideas that came out of these young people, which were fantastic. Now, let's see. Rob, you're part of this.
Thank you.
And yeah, as I said, just the idea is to create a more productive and sustainable workplace. Tips for going paperless. We have made a real concerted effort over the last few years. We've actually at Frayne Work reduced our paper usage by 90%. 90%. It's mind-blowing. And the revenue savings from doing that have been really great. And the way we've done it is, I've said to the kids at work, don't print something out when you're sitting right beside the person you're going to hand it to. Just turn to them and talk to them about it. Or when we're having a meeting or a board meeting, don't print out all the notes. Ask everybody to bring a device to the board table. And we will do it and we'll type it into our devices rather than printing it out. The other thing we've done is we've created a centralised printer so that we've got away with that everybody having an individual printer at their desks, which you don't need. And that has helped enormously as well. This is an interesting one. We do quite a lot of travelling because we work with a lot of Catholic schools and they're all over Australia. And inevitably schools want you to come and visit the school and get a sense of the school and get a feel of the school, etc., etc. Of late, we have been saying that our focus at Frayne Work over the next couple of years is the 8th work of mercy. And that means that we are very conscious of the carbon footprint we leave when we travel. So we have lots of digital tools that enable us to have that connectivity with you. We can have Skype Business where we're talking to you face to face. We can have daily calls if you want, email, and we say, if after that you feel like you are not receiving that sense of service that you would like from us, of course we will come and visit you, but that will be an additional cost and whatever. We're really trying to say, you don't need me to be sitting physically in this office with you to have this discussion. I don't need to fly to Adelaide to have this discussion. And it's just a change of mindset. And once people realise and have the confidence that they're going to receive as much as attention as if you were driving there every week, they're fine with it. Now, obviously this doesn't work in every situation. There are times when you need the physical presence of each other. And it just requires that discernment to know when that's the case and when it's not the case. And trying to be educative in that way with our clients. This is a good one too, efficient collaboration. There are tons of digital online tools on the market that are free, that you can download, that help you to create this sense of collaboration that allows you to reduce the amount of paper. So there's things like in print, for example, back in the day when we were about to put a publication to print, we would print out hard copies, chroma key copies. And then you'd physically drive them to the client, they'd read them, they'd sign them all off, you'd drive them to the printer, you'd sign them off. And now we can send those sorts of documents via software called, say, WeTransfer, you send it, there's a ton of them. And again, it reduces that need to go through those chemical processes. When we're working on a project collaboratively with perhaps a few different parties, we have software called Trello board that allows you to nominate tasks and nominate people to those tasks, and you can all get on at the same time and see what's been done, what's not been done, again eliminating the need for physical travel. So they're just some of the communication tools you'd all be aware of. When I was mentioning earlier creating different ways to sort of replace that print revenue, a really interesting example is a lot of work we do with the Catholic Education Commission of Victoria or the Catholic Education Office of Melbourne. They put out policies for everything. The responsible use of social media policy, the reportable conduct policy, the 10 ways to manage chemicals policy, they go on and on. And some of them are this thick. So I've had a few discussions with the Education Office and said, why don't you create an animation, a 3-minute explanatory animation video? You want these young teachers to read this policy about responsible use of social media. Forget it. They won't even get 3 pages in. But they will watch a 3-minute animation that's a bit light-hearted, that minimises all that guff into the essential key messages that you want those young teachers to hear. So that's become a really powerful tool. And we've got a few of them on our website. Another way we've replaced is that often, for example, with occupational health and safety, we would create physical videos. We'd send out film crews, lighting, microphones. A year later, the thing's dated because the hairstyles are old-fashioned and, the policy's changed and the things cost 40 grand to make. And now we can do it in a 3-minute animation. And it doesn't date, and you're able to cover off the diversity requirements of having black, blonde, old, young, able, disabled, all in this, characters within an animation. So that's been a very successful type of approach as well. There's some of the software I mentioned. Dropbox, a lot of you would know. Google Hangout. Hightail's a great one for sending large files. So again, you're not having to purchase hard drives. It can all go over the net. This is another example of replacing paper. We used to create training manuals, very complex training manuals, so that when we developed a new website for you, we'd give you the manual, you'd go through it, and there'd be a manual for every aspect of it. And now we will do a training session. And again, physically, people used to come and have to drive to us and sit with us, and we'd show. And now we do it all online. We can share screens, and we use a software called TeamViewer so that we can access somebody's desktop if they're struggling, and the whole thing happens online. Again, if someone's feeling like, no, I'm not comfortable with that, we are very welcoming, and we'll say, yes, of course, come in. You're always welcome to come in. But do you want to give this a try first and see how we go with that? And people are usually quite receptive to it. I've talked about animations, I've talked about videos. Think before you print is the other one. Really have a think about whether this needs to be a piece of paper. Is there some other way you could communicate that message? And if you are printing, it's the usual rules. Try to make it double-sided. Try to reuse your emails that you've printed out. And another little tip I use at work is just reduce your font point size by just 1 or 2. And it's amazing how much more information you will fit on the one piece of paper. I mean, if anyone's like me, my text messages are this big because I'm blind as a bat without my glasses. And the kids are, just reduce it a couple of points. A couple of initiatives that came from the kids. Is there one day a week that you could walk or catch public transport to work? And that's an initiative they've all introduced. Rechargeable batteries. We don't buy batteries now. We've got a little machine, and when the batteries go flat, we chuck them on there, they recharge, and we reuse them. And that has, we go through so many batteries with our mice. So that's been a great saver. We have reusable coffee mugs and water glasses at work. We don't have any plastic or any coffee cups. We've introduced recently meat-free Mondays, which I'm going to take that gorgeous ragu recipe back to work. And that was one that came from the kids. They were like, okay, let's have meat-free Mondays. Obviously, the recycling. I was surprised. The kids told me this one, that dishwasher uses less water than hand washing. I didn't know that, so that's what we do. Hand dryers in the bathrooms instead of paper towels. We're continually monitoring our consumption. And this was a big one. You know, people would just walk out the door at the end of the day and leave everything on. So now I walk around like a Nazi going, have you turned off your computer? Have you turned off your computer? And it's taken a few weeks at the beginning, but people are now just automatically turning it off at the end of the day. And it's just really creating that awareness that we've all talked about over the last, few sessions, that it's a consciousness as well. And it's a feeling like, I don't want to hear that response, well, big deal whether I use a coffee cup or not. No, we're all part of a collective, and those little things are a big deal. And as an organisation, we're going to be responsible for them. So that was it. Digital solution.